This is indeed an honor and a pleasure because Rochelle's book is not something you can pick up and read and put and say that okay, I've finished, I'm done. You pick it up again and again and again. That is my experience with coins in rivers. And before I start, I just want to tell you a story about. I'm sure a lot of people have recalled, they've emoted with coins in rivers. I'm not going to ask you why you chose the title because it's quite clear after you read the book. But my own experience with coins in rivers is very personal. My grandmother used to always put a coin with the old flowers from her altar. Whenever we traveled, she would hand me this little clump of flowers and coin, and she would ask us to toss it in the river. And I was the eldest in the family, so it was my solemn duty to toss it into the river, mostly Tapi River or Narmada. And dad would drive close to the to the bank, and I would toss it out, and my brother of course would say that what a waste of a coin, because all he wanted at the end of the trip was something
Yes.
that you could buy with the coin, and mostly it was these freshwater uh, uh, you know uh, fruit or something that you could get on the river. So that was my closest to coins
Mm,
and
mm,
rivers. And the other thing, what I would really moving on, uh, your book actually goes, it spans a whole bunch of things. Forestry, a clock tower made with garbage, which will be like a normal thing for us in the future. Then environment,
mm.
the riots in Bombay,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and also a few of the poems, the first ones in the book are very feminist in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether you see yourself as a feminist writer,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm going to concentrate only on those poems for this evening. So do you see, let's start with a question like, do you
Right,
see
right,
yourself as a feminist writer?
right. So, first and foremost, thank you for engaging so deeply with the book because I can see those lovely stick notes and sticky notes. And also, good evening, everybody. So lovely to see all of you in one of my most favorite bookshops. And I've done a Hyben workshop years ago. Now, this question, see, Heta, I don't I think, like most writers, I say is the same thing with me. We don't think we're feminists, or even sometimes I forget I'm a woman writer. I'm just a writer, I'm just an atom in the galaxy, or I'm just nobody writing things and observing life, the world, and all. And many a times when the world reminds me that I'm a woman, and the most I'm reminded is when the street harassment,
Mm.
or when there are cages or there are shackles. That's when you're reminded that, oh, I'm a woman, maybe this wouldn't have happened if I was a man. When you start doing these calculations, you become these signifiers, these identities.
Mm.
So there are many times when I'm not these people and I'm just nobody. And if it's possible, the highest level of freedom is to be nobody, because in a different way, because then you can be everybody and you can be everything, and you can write from there. But I very rarely know that this is not possible. We have a point of view which comes and is informed from whom we are and how life shaped us or society shaped us. And then you come back into the avatar of a woman. And then when you look at the point of view of the world, I think what we're trying to negotiate is freedoms.
Mm.
The only thing we want, or any human wants, is equality, freedom. And in sometimes not the biggest ways, but the smallest of ways. And probably that's what then the world says is a feminist, and maybe then the expressions come under
Mm.
feminism.
Mm.
So yes, I don't have a problem calling myself that, but I rarely, when I'm sitting to write a story or a poem, know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Shall we start with the reading? I
Yes.
had a wish list of 18 poems from
Wow.
the book, but please stop us if we exceed time. The
Yes.
first one is
Hmm.
called Bread.
You want me to read bread?
Yeah, but
But
not all of
yeah,
it.
just
Maybe
yeah,
just a
yeah.
few lines, or whatever your favorite lines are from Bread.
Yes, yes.
That's the first poem.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
then I have a few questions about Bread.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll read maybe I'll maybe read the last three
Mm,
stanzas. Yeah. So bread, of course, we'll talk about bread, but I'm just breaking bread now. Yeah. So I'm reading the last three stanzas actually. Grain rupturing, harvest of coarse flour, stocked in stone built scent of the walls, bonfires of hearths, roti, kapra, or makan, between the crumpets and cupcakes, pretzels, pandesals, Eucharistic, the first light of chimera, warm as broth, baptismal as sun kissed barley and sedge, bread for the worm, bread for the fish, bread for the rabbit, bread for the civet.
beautiful. That deserves a round of applause, I think. Thank you. Now, is it only men who,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
uh, are the perpetrators of this violence against women? Or and also in bread, you the only reference you have to Indian bread is the word roti.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's baguette and the other breads from all over the world. So,
Yeah.
any reason for that? Were
Yeah.
you traveling or?
No, so actually, bread this poem, and why I've placed it here. I know that readers don't read poems as like a novel. You have to read it from start
Mm,
to end, unless there's a different instruction of how to read it.
mm,
But a poetry book you could read from anywhere. You could just actually, it's like a deck of cards.
mm,
So why did I even work so hard on placing it? Because for me, there was this how poetry affects us. So how does it happen to us? Is like a bolt of lightning.
mm,
It just strikes you, or sometimes I think it's like a wild animal. It attacks you. Or it's like a scent. You pick it up and then you follow it through the wilderness, your own wilderness. So for me, bread happened one morning when it was like the morning light, and I was thinking of something very, very pure.
mm,
And that purity was something I was trying to capture. So it happened to embody itself in bread.
mm,
So when I thought of bread, I was thinking, okay, this is the feeling I want to capture, something very early in a day, but not a day of one person's life, but a day of civilization.
mm,
Like a very macro day, like everyone's day, but like the birth of civilization. So what is bread? And I suddenly realized that actually every civilization ate bread in different ways.
mm,
Yeah, so whether it was roti or naans or some other kind, you call it so many
mm,
names. And I had to, before writing this story, when as this poem, as it was like happening to me, I had to research because I didn't know so many breads.
mm,
But I wanted to capture all of civilizations. What did you do in the morning,
mm.
after you, when you wanted to break your fast or break your night, and how did you do it? So actually I wanted to capture the morning light in this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
it is like almost like the birth of civilization. And
Mm.
so the last poem, bedrock.
Pa- oh,
Bedrock.
my favorite is pav actually.
Yeah, Pau happened to be. Now we're sitting with all the Paus, but Pau is like, definitely it had to be there.
Mm.
Had to be there, and why wouldn't it be there? I was heckled as a Pau Ali.
Yeah, and I was as a child heckled as a Bawaji ki beti.
So the whole idea of, yes, Pau in, or food as community slang also,
Mm,
for good or for bad.
mm,
Yeah, but yes, but no, the last poem, bedrock, is like, the if you start with bread as the birth of civilization, and then you end with nothing else being there,
mm,
and only light,
mm,
like bedrock.
mm.
So I was trying to sequence it, but I know all the mischievous readers will just pick it and read it from any. Yeah. And to answer the first question about men as perpetrators, no, I think patriarchy is the perpetrator. And whoever follows patriarchy,
Ah,
men or women, are, or anybody for that matter, systems,
mm,
or even isms like capitalisms that follow patriarchy,
mm.
those are perpetrators. I don't think this is
It's
gendered.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not gendered.
Thank you for that. Keyholes. Shall we read from Keyhole?
Yes, I could read the whole poem also. I mean, I don't know, or we could read.
Yeah,
Two.
whatever you like. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. Only this, like, they're a bit of a long poems, but yes. So keyholes. I'll just preamble it a little bit. When I had newly come to Bombay, from my small town Kalyan. So Bombay was my aspirational city, and I always thought when I go to Bombay, I'll have all the financial freedom, I'll have all the freedoms in the world. But when you reach Bombay, of course, it has its own troubles and problems, challenges, and then you realize you never reach the promised land.
Mm.
Okay, there is no promised land. But what I also realize is that when you're a single woman in the city, there is a certain way in which you navigate the city. But I also realize even if you're not a single woman in the city, you're still a single woman in the world, no matter what your age and stage, because the world always wants to tell you how to live. It wants to tell you, don't do this. Why did you do that? So it always wants you're always a single woman. But this is for that real single woman. Keyholes. We hide our wet lace behind a trellis of plants, our voices honeyed from jaded soap operas. Our requiems are parties inside our heads, earphone to earphone. Tolerance in the diorama of this rented place, no door of solace or shame kept open. They will keep boyfriends and they will come with trouble and they will eat meat and. But sometimes we translate into vixens, late night party girls with eye masks, returning on the stairs. Shh, the landlord is insomniac, to stilettos and side slits of little black dresses, books, menstrual cups, and spandex. Who will take responsibility for them? And emerald nights pass into agate mornings, the sapphire of our headscarves and prayer mats, from insular to secular near our 2x2 boxes. We curl each night against thoughts of saffron eyes, bloodshot. If the nights fall over our skin, our bodies become bottles of wine with a crack against it, dripping, dripping. They will get raped and wooden cages with wooden birds flapping to horizon. We scrape air like parchment, peeling secrets from walls of adopted jailhouses. They will grow wings and serpentine winds belching histories of women who left when they heard the bricks squeaking. Shh, and not again, and please behave yourselves. But we play safe in dog chewed chuckles, our cycle tires gripping the road's ruggedness, as alleyways sugar lip the broken sky of old whispering neighbors. All this, all this for only one proper peg to place the key of our russet city freedoms. They will wear short skirts and
So maybe the landlord or landlady is basing this on her own personal fears.
yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes. And there's always, for me, there's always that gossiper
Mm.
who I love very much, the gossiping characters, who I have seen from childhood in my
Yeah.
large Goan family also, who lived in Kalyan, that there would always be somebody gossiping about somebody. And even if we didn't want to hear it, I think that was my first research,
Mm.
my first understanding of humanity and human beings, and it would be very spicy. So I think the gossiper is a very important italicized part. It even comes in Harry Mendonça as one of the poems,
Yes.
where there's always someone saying that's something. It's
Yeah.
always italicized.
It's her own fear that she's actually
yes, 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 yes.
translating.
I mean, I like your empathy towards the landlady or the landlord. That's true.
I
That's
know
true.
where she's coming from.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
And the next one,
Yeah.
In That Land Under the Sun, also to me a feminist poem.
Yes, yes.
Do you want to read?
Definitely. I think this, I must mention a little bit about this because there are always stories behind poems.
Yeah.
And sometimes, there was Manglesh Dabral, the Hindi poet, who's now no more, who had said that you are one of the few, poets who can write stories in your poetry. And I thought maybe that was because I was a short story writer also, a haibunier also, because, I have this book which soon we'll have in this book, store, which is the Paper
Oh.
Asylum, which is a book of Haibun. And so I think somewhere there's this storyteller, there's the poet, and maybe that's why my poetry might have stories, not just behind them, in them. But yeah, this one was when I visited a little village in Maharashtra called Shegaon.
Mm.
And it was a literary event, so to speak. And most of this is something that actually happened. Yeah, like this was one of the poems which was not as much a macro deliberation of society, but something that I picked off
Mm.
from,
Mm.
yeah, like very more realistic material kind of. In that land under the sun, in that land under the sun, where dry heat hits bone, and in your pocket you keep a red onion to peel flakes at 46 degrees centigrade, male poets speak of Kamla Das and her feminist poetry, entering a friend's wife's kitchen and directing her to abandon her breakfast preparations. They are getting late. There are no cafes in the neighborhood. Yet they depart with a caravan of 15 ravenous townspeople. Under an angry sun, hunger hitting inside their guts, pipe pipers talk of timeliness, reaching a nowhere wilderness, while the woman in her four-wall steel cliche keeps away a mountain of grated coconut over flattened rice, sugar, coffee, and unused milk parboiled. Her father was a village radical, but she tucks her wet thighs at the edge of her sari. As onions shrivel in our pockets with intense upheaval, men use Urdu and Marathi verses to fight God, and the women can't even fight the men who are not their husbands because they know no poetry.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So wet saris, and I then added my own thoughts about wet dreams, and you know,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
So it's everything that we suppress under that sari pallu.
Mm, mm,
Willow
yeah.
witching that
Wow,
follows.
wow. I think you are going to make me read all the poems.
Not all, not all.
No, that is so nice, actually.
Only if you
Okay.
want to. If you
No, no,
want
no.
to,
I would read the whole book. But yes. But thank you for really engaging with every poem. I'll read maybe two stanzas.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
of Willow Witching. So I think Willow Witching, if I have to just preamble the little, because sometimes the poems have the preamble in it.
Mm,
They
mm,
already have what they have to say. But I think water, there's again this idea of environment and the concerns, but it may come from the woman in me or maybe the human being in me.
mm,
Maybe it's not gendered, but I wouldn't know because I can't jump out into a male body. So I just know me, that the concern for nature, water, and water preservation, mostly because you see it being wasted so much. I mean,
mm,
food is being wasted, and there's hunger on one side,
mm,
and water. So it came from probably somewhere where I think also being in the city of Bombay, that I love the monsoons from the window. I must say that. Because not from when you go down and walk on the road,
through
it's
the
not.
slush.
But from the window, I love the monsoon. So it's like I love water, and water has such a metaphorical symbol of so many things, actually.
And I think, except for the Brahmaputra, all our rivers have
Yes.
feminine names.
Feminine names, and yes, feminine names, and also my own river in I mean my in my city, Meethi River is a gutter.
Mm, mm,
So that's the saddest part of
mm.
that we don't see. I don't know when we would ever see a blue Meethi River. It's a gutter, yeah.
There's
So
always hope.
yes, so willow witching. In heat spell before ground swell, trembling, a woman goes pillar to post for horse trots of drops that spell like robbers. Dust flying mildew against her veins, surging in damp linen like dermis of wet mongrels. For the volley on asbestos, we will find someplace good, divination in gemstones and a witching rod, like the old rain man dousing a hazel twig in the land of the Babu's office, she runs around the whole bureaucratic system.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rochelle. I think
There is more to the poem, but I'm
more to the
kind of
poem.
like
I know.
stopping it.
We'll
Yes. Yeah.
we'll take a break where you can answer a few questions.
Yes, yes.
And some of us write poetry, and a lot of it is. I feel there are two of us, like the fun poets, the ones who make fun of ourselves or for the world around us, and how people see us also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I was packed the car to go from Panchgani to Goa, and I said, "Wait, I have to." My driver said, "Chale," and I said, "Nahi, ruko. मेरे को प्रज्ञा poetry का class है." I was doing Pragya Bhagat's class. So he said, "क्या मैडम इस उम्र में poetry करते?" So I'm saying, what the?
Was he insulting poetry rather?
Huh?
Was he insulting poetry
No,
rather than the Umar? I'm
but it's an
thinking.
interesting, comment
Yeah.
coming from him. And I said, how old does this man think I am? Like, is he thinking I'm 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 500, 5,000 years old or what? किस उम्र में poetry नहीं कर सकते?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's
So
more
it's
big on
also about
poetry than
it's
age.
also about how people see you when you say you write poetry. So how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a serious poet or a fun poet?
See, I see myself as there was a time when I didn't think I was a poet. Yeah, I knew I was a short fictionist, short story writer. Okay, with this book of mine, I must wave it out because this book is also not here. It will be here someday. Bombay Hangovers.
Oh.
But there's no vodka or gin in this, okay? Yeah, it's the more like the memories, because the Japanese short poetry forms believe the sixth sense is memory. So I think in Bombay you come across, because it's a more populous city, you come across so many people and they leave an imprint or an impression on you, and you, if you're a writer, you need to somehow write them out. And so Bombay Hangovers. But I didn't think I was a poet for the longest time. So when I became an accidental poet, I only there's this black comedy attached to that, because you never wanted to be this, but then not only are you it, but after some time you're more recognized as a poet than a short fictionist. So somewhere I did feel like, what's happening? I can't control this. I can't control it. And after a while I didn't want to control it, because, like, let's say if I was going to a writing residency and they asked for 15 pages of writing samples and I had ready 10 pages of poetry, and it works, it clicks. So I don't feel then that what is happening. I'm like, okay, this may be a good thing. And so I think I was always an accidental poet, and I always wanted to be a fictionist. I want to be a screenwriter, but not the poet. So I think when I came to poetry, for me, I myself didn't think it's a profession. I myself thought it's just something on the side of fiction, and it's not, I never thought it was a hobby. But my family, who's very doesn't have artists in the house, so they look at things very simply. They look at things with a middle class corporate lens. If there's no salary, this is a hobby. If there's no check, this must be a hobby. So
time pass karte.
or you just, what are you doing? You're just sitting, and what are you doing? And sometimes, like, I do have older people in the house, like my in-laws and all, who don't know the internet also. So they don't understand even Google. So for them, are you just sitting and doing what on that thing? Like, because it's like they don't know Google also. At least there's many family members who know that there's an internet thing going on. But if you don't have a salary check coming in the end, or you don't sling your bag and go somewhere and sling that bag and come back, that means you've not performed. You're not performed, right? So they didn't say that, but you have the subtext around you, which is much more powerful. And you yourself are not serious about the form. So somewhere it looks like some happy thing going on, like, you go to the pub. So poetry was like going to the pub. Like, you just do it and you just come back. It's a Thursday's thing. And so for long it is that, and only it starts getting serious when you start pitching to prizes or residencies, and you're given that, and then you're like, oh my God, the world has taken me seriously, for
Mm.
God's sake. Maybe I need to also be serious about it, you know. Yeah,
I find
yeah,
that
yeah,
your poetry is quite intense,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
And though you make it sound like fun, and there may be a little bit of defiance there,
yeah, yeah.
but it is serious poetry. It is.
No, that is
Uh,
because I think it's not to do particularly with poetry, but to anything that I engage with.
mm,
Like
mm,
when I engage with screenplays, I will go to the depths of it.
depth of it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even if it's a romance comedy, or if it's a
Mm,
thriller, it's a horror, I don't know.
mm,
I learn it
mm,
because of that way I'm very obsessive
mm,
about the
mm,
forms.
mm,
When I was doing Haibun, I went to the point of not only getting it mainstreamed, but I went, if I was the on the syllabus board of St. Xavier's College in Bombay, I got it on the syllabus.
mm.
So I go to some maniac obsessive levels, but I don't think that's because I'm a serious poet. It's because I'm so obsessive that I'll take it on to me and then I'll do my best. So yeah,
That's you.
yeah, that's me.
That's you.
That's me in
Yeah.
screenplay. That's me in a novel.
There's
Yeah,
also a bit of you in, most poets, the poets we know at least, they will write about what's happening to me. Heartbreak, for example, and so on. This is happening to me. And there's another level of poetry which
mm.
says this is happening to others around
Yes,
me.
yes.
But yours is, why is it happening to them?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
So that for me it was very endearing, very touching. Why is this happening to them?
Yeah,
It may
yeah.
not be your personal experience,
Yes, yes.
but you, as an observer, also you feel
Yeah,
for.
but I think that happened slowly, Heta. You know,
Mm,
like there was a time when 4 degrees of separation. Yes, here it is.
mm,
I must just fan this out, okay? Like Leonard will be happy. No, just kidding. But this was my first book. Okay, it had lots of raw poetry in it. 4 degrees of separation,
okay.
and that's when I was a new poet. So that was mostly to do with me. I have gossiped about my Goan family
Mm.
in gathering. I hope you all have
How did how
heard
did
me.
that? Yeah, did that go well with the family?
I'm going to read it out in the end to y'all. Okay, it's
Okay.
from the other book, but I have to do this in Goa. Come on. In fact, wherever I start this poem, it's an icebreaker because everyone loves gossip of someone else's family,
Yeah.
not theirs. But I'll always start by saying, "Do you gossip about your family?" And people will be like, and then some two three will say yes, and I'm like, I gossip, and this is the poem. You give it to them. But I had more personal poetry there.
Mm,
So there was small town love. There was but there was a corporate life, and baby is one of the poems which even today I feel is relevant. Like some of the poems I feel I may have not outgrown,
mm,
but poems like baby, where the corporate world thinks that a woman who's married and may have children is not as resourceful as for
mm, mm.
promotion because she's not that
Yeah.
much of an asset.
Mm.
At the same time, they're so myopic because that baby is going to be their consumer one day. But they don't think so far. They're like, okay, she's not good enough. So I was in the corporate world when I used to see this around me. So even then, besides my kitchen sink and cradle and eve teasing
Mm,
and my own little world as a woman, I would see society happening,
mm,
and I would engage with it. And I think sometimes get annoyed with anything which is not just, not
mm,
fair. Now,
mm,
whether that's patriarchy and feminism, not that, it's just simple that I do get incensed when I feel it's not fair, it's not just,
mm,
it's not
mm,
right, wherever that happens. So I think that engagement was there. In this book, there's more family and love poems. In Paper Asylum, it still is in the personal spaces, but I think I was moving outward.
ah,
By the time I reached this book, I was also a screenwriter and I was
mm,
also a novelist. So I had moved out.
mm, mm,
I had moved to world politics, and I had moved to knowing more about what's happening in wider orbits
mm.
than myself. I think also how many heartbreaks could I have had? How much of love could I have had? How much of street harassment, or how much of like things can you have in an uneventful life? After that, move out. You are finding things from other places that move you, and I think that's
So
good.
last night we had a poetry event
Yes.
at the Museum of Goa, and one of our guest poets, Seema, she said, this is about heartbreak. And she asked the audience, she said, what do you think? How long should you wait? after a heartbreak.
Uh-huh.
And people said 6 months, 2 months, 2 minutes, and so on. And I'm thinking, why must we be the ones waiting?
Yes.
Why must we be the ones waiting?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do you want to read from the baby or the corporate poem? Or,
Yeah, I mean, I would
yeah,
definitely. I mean, that's such an old poem, no?
yeah.
To visit it would
But
be.
because you mentioned it, it'll
Yes,
be
yes.
nice.
I want to ask a question. Shall we keep it for later?
Oh,
Whatever Heta
whatever is
says.
It's
comfortable.
actually about the
Whatever you're
poem
comfortable with.
Bread. So I just wanted to ask about this poem.
Yes,
Sure,
You
sure,
write,
yes.
sure.
just wanted to ask your thoughts. You've written thoughts of divinity, baguette giving way to unity,
Bread
challah
from
to
bread.
duality,
Yeah.
yeah, brioche
Mm.
to trinity, bread from the progenitors of sourdough. Can you talk a little bit more about that, especially at the end, the cracking of the egg of a life dreamt first?
Mm.
That's a very deep
Yeah. No,
thought.
see, some of the lines, no, they happen in trance. Okay, like it's just like that poem takes you on,
Mm.
and you write whatever the words you have. So I'm not sure I would be able to, like be able to tell you a lot. It just happened in that moment that I was talking of that morning light, the first sparks of civilization, and everything that was first. So it's, I think, more poem that you'll feel. Yeah, and I've used bread in every way, like unity, duality, trinity. But
Also,
yeah,
the poems are segregated into different sections.
sections. Yes.
Where did that thought come from? That is also quite interesting.
Yeah. Yes, and that was one of your questions as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
please, it's free. Feel free to ask.
Yeah. So I think, so definitely, as I'm searching for the poem Baby, so when I write poetry or when I've written poetry books, I haven't outlined the book or the project, because I think outlining is, or planning is, more for the novels or the screenplays. Screenplays more so because money,
Mm.
the dirty money which executes every scene. So they'll ask you, do you need the scene, do you not need,
Mm.
can you have the resolution of the mother and the son in the garden instead of on the Times
Because
Square,
it costs less
because
to.
it costs.
Yeah.
Yes, everything costs. So there's a different objective when you're doing screenplays. There's a different objective when you're even writing a novel. You have to only worry about the reader's attention span.
Mm.
But when you're writing poetry, I don't think we question a lot, which also liberates you.
Mm.
No one is questioning each phrase and saying, could this be not be done, and will the poem still
What
stand?
about your
Yes, editing.
your editors?
Yeah.
Do they question you? Do they say
So
what?
my editors here for this one was Sonali Jindal from Hachette, who was not a poetry book editor per se.
Mm.
She's edited other genres.
Mm.
So she said, I'll edit it like prose, like wherever I feel. She was very tough with the history. And I have been taking poetic licenses with the history. So she was like, no, from where did Dr. Sapatnekar come? Dr. Sapatnekar is in the investigation report of the Bombay blasts.
Yeah.
So I had put Dr. Sapatnekar, and she's like, show me where he is. And I'm like, oh God, where is he? I hope I haven't made this up. But then I find him in Hussein Zaidi's Black Friday.
Mm.
So
You're okay.
I had to. So the history, she would say, see, these two events didn't happen at that time in history. And I was like, she was very good with her history. I couldn't bluff. I couldn't get away with poetic license. But the other things is something that she did very minor changes. And what I like is, even though she's not a poetry book editor, she could edit poetry. In the sense, she would ask me, do you really want, like in Willow Witching, I say they spell like robbers.
Mm.
She says, is it spell or is it smell, or why you say spell? I said, no, that's a way of expression. Let it be. But we had that little thing. But very little was changed. And she mostly championed the book, actually, in the house. And what I took as a great compliment is that, not being a poetry editor, if you're championing the book, then you have resonated with it. So for me, that was like something. And talking about the sections, so once I wrote, like, let's say around 100 pieces, I knew my earlier publisher had told me that once you have around 80 to 100, it's a book. So I knew I had to stop then, and other poems would come later. And then I thought of what would go together. Then you see that, okay, there's environment, there's sexuality, there is something else, and they all cluster themselves up. And they did.
And they do on their own.
Yeah,
they do.
They do. So all my books are exactly in that same order. All the disorder is classified into order last. Because how can you plan a poetry book? It's very difficult to plan a poetry book. You can't plan poetry. It happens to you. No, it
True.
happens.
Yeah.
I'll read Baby.
Okay.
Where is Baby? Okay, 89. I'm visiting this poem after so long. It's a reunion of sorts. Thank you, Heta. In fact, this poem was also dramatized on the Space Stage Company in Iowa.
Oh.
Yeah. They wanted a dramatic poem for their drama students. Baby. A. We don't want the sound of that baby in our audio. It has to be clear with the instructor's voice. Otherwise, it's a bug. Whose baby is it? The voiceover woman's? Didn't we tell you to hire non-babied women? Redo this without the crying and the sulking. No, the expense is on you. You blundered, or just don't pay the woman. B. This is not a creche, daycare, or school. This is a corporation. Don't fuss about your maternity. What does it mean to be tired around the 8th month of pregnancy? Where's your women's liberation these days? Equal pay for equal work. No, we can't grant that holiday. No, you don't deserve that promotion. You were not even working this year. You were on sick leave. That's not how our vision and mission functions. Shut up that crying baby. C. We need a cute baby. A brand mascot. Someone that can smile at the cameras. We are targeting new mothers with our new products. We want to keep them happy. Find me a smiling mother and her smiling baby. Put our product near them. And this is how the banner will read in tomorrow's papers. We love new mothers. We are doing a research on what they want from their lives, motherhood, their babies. We spent a good many dollars on this survey. But please shut up that baby in the background. It's sheer noise. No one can work at this rate. D. We don't recruit women who are getting married. Soon they will want an unplanned interruption. Then another. We only cover one-time maternity. Why do fathers need paternity leave? Do they get pregnant? Have you seen the population? E. But what about our consumer statistics? We need new babies to try out our rattles, medicines, insurance, clothing, diapers. Babies are growing up fast these days.
Okay, Rochelle. We'll open the floor for questions now, if you like. And then, but I do want you to read Pau before we end the evening.
Pau and also gathering. I think
Gathering
I should do that.
Okay. So, any questions from the house? No, then go for Pau, I think.
Yeah. For all the Paus here. Yes.
Yeah.
What does a screenplay writer actually do? What do you?
Yeah. So I think.
Good question.
Yeah. So there are two or three kinds of screenwriting. Assignments. Either we get a commissioned work wherein someone says this is the brief and write a film around this, and we want it in this budget, we want it in this location. They would set out things for you and you write. But when I'm writing, I'm talking of the original, or what you call it, the spec screenwriters. So I go more like a poet or a novelist who has original ideas, and I will flesh it out. So there are processes in the sense that you write a 110-page document, which is a screenplay. You put it in that center text, almost like a play, the format of a play. And for me, a screenplay is a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So the thesis is mostly what the hero or the heroine wanted to tell you. Okay, like they wanted to tell you honesty is the best policy, for example. The antithesis is what the villain mostly wants to tell you. No, not in this day.
It doesn't work for me.
And the synthesis is somewhere in the middle, wherein they have a fight or a clash with all drama and bombs and women and men and all that. And then you have the synthesis, which is, okay, honesty can work, but with these conditions. That becomes a synthesis. So I think for original stories, it starts with almost like how you write a novel. You start by outlining or gathering or information, imagination, all that together, and then for screenplays you outline it separately because it has to make sense as acts: act 1, act 2, act 3, or if you're working as 5 act structures, and sequences. So because you're trying to make each scene which is dramatic, like a beginning, middle, and end, there's a lot of structure that goes into it. And the structure goes into it because the audience that watches cinema is a very finicky, has attention span much more finicky than a intimate reader of a book. Because when you're reading a book, you're a single audience mostly. Even if you're doing a book club, you're still reading the book in an intimate way. When you're watching, you have popcorn, you have Pepsi, and you have an interval, and then everything. It's a social gathering.
It's a sport.
Yes, and you need to really be magnetized. So your scenes have to be very sharp. Yeah. So as a novelist and as a screenwriter, I feel that the screenplay allows me to tell a very large story, and a novel lets me tell a very deep story. That's the kind of a difference. Yeah, kind of.
Answers your question, I think. Do you flesh out the characters, or somebody else does that?
No, I flesh out everything, and fleshing out the characters means like a novel, like you approach it with a lot of understanding of character psychology, like what does the character want, need, the same things, wound and ghost. You always do that. But I think in addition to that, there's a new learning that I just thought of just 3 days ago, a kind of an epiphany, that you write good characters even for the actors, because you want to bait the actors. Sorry to say the word bait in that way. It's not a negative baiting, but you want to attract good actors.
Talent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't only, so first as to write the screenplays thinking I want a good, I wouldn't even think of producer, because you think of producer, you think budget. So you don't think producer, because I don't understand budgets. Yeah, for me, imagination is free. It's a reality when they say, how can this be done? VFX lagega, and I'm like, what?
Okay.
Okay. I just wrote because I was this novelist who just wrote. But so you think of the director. I wanted to please the director so that he feels good enough to write, to take this work on. But now I realize if you concentrate very good on character psychology and you give it shades and arcs, and the character grows and it's very rich, the actors will be very interested in doing that. And then you may have more champions for that project. So that was the recent realization. I think I was dreaming at one of the book launches and this occurred to me. This apple fell on my head. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so your favorites.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So there are 2 poems that really caught my attention: Wedding Day and Letter to Application to School Principal. Almost reminded me of Ezekiel's
Yes.
Goodbye Party too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You caught me with the muse and the source.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I thought that there must be some influence, I don't know, or inspiration.
Thank you.
And but my question is, you said that poetry is like chance, and it just comes, which is true. But do you also plan and restructure and redraft something like this, especially where you're using deliberate words?
Yeah. Thank you very much for this question, because Wedding Day was the toughest poem to write in this book. Because like, do you want me to read Wedding Day?
Yeah, sure.
I can read it and then tell you about it. It was the toughest poem in this book, and you'll come to know why. I have worked for I'm not rewritten any line, because poem is one exhalation, but I had to do a lot of research before even daring to begin. Okay, now I'll tell you. And I consider this an asinine poem, but yeah. 51. Okay, so Nizam Ezekiel wrote a lot of sober poetry, and he wrote some of his fun poems, right? And the fun poems really stuck. Later we heard critique that while he was mocking the subaltern, or while he was mocking the speaker who couldn't speak good English, he also mocked the protagonist. So there was this critique. So I listened carefully to it, because I like those poems, but I could also see a valid point. So I wanted to do this badmash poetry. I wanted to have the hasya rasa also in.
But it's very difficult to do.
Yeah. But now how do I not mock the person who like, so in litter of application, I have not, the rickshaw puller is writing an application to the principal. So you read it, but I've not mocked him because I had to be so careful. That line is so easy that you mock that person who doesn't know the language, but that comes from elitism. So how to not do it? So, but then if your intention in the beginning is only clear, the exhalation will be right. You have to think of this in the beginning, but because you can't rewrite a poem. At least I couldn't. I can rewrite a paragraph of a novel. I can shift all pages of a novel. I can't rewrite a poem. It's one exhalation. I can only cut extra words, extra stanzas. I could never rewrite. So you have to be careful in the beginning. But for Wedding Day, I have mocked the misogynist because the protagonist is an asshole. Okay. So Wedding Day. And also I did one thing which I felt liberated with is getting off proper English. Because sometimes we are so brewing in English and getting better at it. I was like, let me just break free and just get crazy with it. I wanted to get crazy. When Santos wanted urgent love marriage in just 15 days, he said, I need girl only for me. She has faith fully for me. He looked for simple things. She should be a non-Facebook user, exceptionally fair, convented, at least matric and virgin, or issueless and innocent divorcee. Completely non-feminist, but an extremist and compassionate. Patriotic to country with a keen desire to increase India's military and sports capabilities. Expert in child raising, H1 visa, no bar, powerful and rich. And congratulations, he found her. Her good name, Priya, from top college, 22 or 21, with a dowry of $10,000. They went for a special wedding party with all drinks included: whiskey, vodka, gin, child beer, strong rum than old monk. The marriage hall with unisex laboratories for all those gay people was near Sharma Sweets and Snakes, right side to Anus English Academy, run by Anu Sharma, in front of Santosh Taylor's Alterations of Ladies and Gents, and Welcome Tourist Office of We Speak English. At the backside gate, visitors were welcome, only regrets to their vehicles, and no encouragement of beggars. In trust we God, Santosh vetted Priya. They look like hero and heroine with their crowns, no? Said all. They're laughing so much, showing their Colgate teeth. In such a type of marriage, go slow. This is an accident porn area, said an uncle. The gifts were many: bedsheets and Sony erection phones, organic ghee from tension-free cows, and condoms in all flavors like hot air balloons. The only villains were the in-laws, who took up the best gifts in compensation. Shoplifters will be prostituted, said Santosh, making his big eyes red. But who were listening? All males and females were busy eating and drinking. Only their dead bodies will walk home, he rode, either on foot or ambulance. Don't these people know I am yes for Santosh, satisfaction guarantee? Above all vermins and men's, get my special vitamins. I want 2 children, both men, Yaxiam Yalian Zen. And it's fun embodying an asshole sometimes.
This reminds me of a tailor we used to go to in Kolaba, and he had a big sign on the ground floor. He had a loft on top. Ladies can have fits upstairs.
Yeah. So for this one, I had to research before I wrote it, because I couldn't. You can't rewrite a poem. So this had to all be researched, and I'm telling you, it is a headache. Because your first research is, I thought of Wedding Day because it happened, like a poem is a convergence of many things. And so when I thought, oh, you know what, I want to have fun with this. I want to write one improv poem, but I want to also have fun. But then what do I want? And I realized, yes, I want this. I want Santosh and the Wedding Day. But then I was like, I need all that crazy English. And I need to collect that first and keep, because child beard and all those things I needed to. Yeah.
Chill beer.
But there's also a lot of wordplay in it, like
Chill beer.
prostituted
Yes. This
Yeah.
was really the material. Imagine for a Badmash poem I had to work so much, not for the others as much. Yeah.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I
Sonia.
want to know whether this nothing was.
No.
Were you mocking people who speak like this?
No,
Or
no,
what-
no.
what was your intention of this?
So for this poem, the protagonist wants the typical fair woman, convented, virgin, and all.
Yeah.
So I'm mocking him.
You're mocking.
I'm mocking him. But there's this other poem, the letter of application to a school principal.
No, I'm talking about this.
No, this poem I'm mocking him because
The-
he wants the stereotypical
fair and,
dowry. He wants dowry. He wants everything actually. He wants two
The-
boys. Yeah, he wants he's a misogynist.
Made to order bride.
Yeah. He wants everything. Yeah.
What, there are times I've read things and where they let us see a person like Santosh types. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm not going
yeah.
to say just
Yes.
and he's a part of your story or novel or whatever. I don't know much about poetry, novel. Now, when I've seen people who, when they write about such a person, they will revert to a very ridiculous English, Now, how do you feel about it? Is it supposed to be that way? I mean, somebody who doesn't speak English is making an effort to speak. Like Jumpal, I hear these people who go to America and it's difficult for them to go around the place.
Yes.
And possibly they might speak the, English, which is. What do you feel about this? Because I'm very.
Like as a character in a novel,
Yes,
like how we would
yes.
I
Let
think
us say we
yeah.
go to United States
Huh,
and parents, my mother
Yeah,
doesn't know
yeah,
how to speak
yeah,
English,
yeah.
and she speaks probably Konkani.
Yes.
And then when she goes there, she makes an effort to speak
Yeah,
English,
yeah.
but it really doesn't work
Yes,
well because
yes.
she's never spoken.
Yes.
And then do you use that sort of English that she would speak, or do you use a normal thing?
If I was writing,
You were writing,
if I was writing, I would definitely use the language that she's whatever English she's speaking, but give her empathy and humanize her, not mock her. So she is visiting from her country where she's comfortable and in her age to a foreign country. So she can't be punished for that because she's there for whatever reasons. So there will be a lot of empathy and humanization in that character that I would give, but I will keep the dialect the same. But it will not be in a way to mock the dialect. It will be to make it authentic. But yeah, here it is mocking. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Now let us say that this person X,
Mm.
I mean, when she speaks to a person outside, let
Yes.
us say an American or
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't know her language,
Mhm.
and the only means of communication is English.
Yes.
That time I can understand both of them not doing so well. I mean, speak. What about when she speaks to her people at home? Because she's probably going to speak Konkani.
Yes.
So she speaks to people. What would you do in that case?
See,
how would
Yeah.
your story with
Yeah.
regard to English be?
I could either italicize the Konkani in a parenthesis.
No, you're not
English,
you're
just
saying
English.
Just
Just English. I think then I would keep it to
normal. No?
normal. Yeah,
Normal.
normal. Yes.
Because you're writing.
Because she's writing fluently
She's
that. Yes.
speaking Konkani. That's
Yes.
what I thought. When
Yes.
she's speaking Konkani,
Yes.
she probably is fluent in Konkani.
Yes.
So you would use the English there as fluent.
Fluent.
But if she went and met an American or Lithuanian, whoever, then probably both of them would not.
Yeah, and she would probably use Goan English.
Whatever English.
Yeah,
she is.
because
Listen,
Indian English also has so many
So many
subcategories,
whatever
right?
it is. No, I just
Yeah.
want to know
Yes.
what would
Yes.
you do outside the house
Yeah.
when she met somebody
Yeah.
not a Goan?
Yeah.
What would you do inside the house
Yeah,
when
but-
she's talking to her own family?
Yes, but whatever I do, I would love her a lot because I would see my own mother in her, no?
Yeah.
So she would all have a very, very compassionate point of view,
Mm.
and especially people who are going outside, they're already nervous
Yeah.
and freaked out
Yeah.
with so many things, right?
Overwhelmed.
Yes, so
Yeah.
she would have my sympathies and a protective thing. Maybe I would be oversimple, like
Mhm.
just
Because I read an author who
Yeah.
was using the outside English.
Mhm.
Even at home, I could not see the sense of it
Mhm.
because she probably speaking in her own language, and which is whatever Bengali or whatever.
yeah.
Why is she speaking in such a fashion? inside the house. This was what I thought, you know.
Right, right. So that registered as like
It
yeah, it
to me,
fell.
it registered as though, what the hell? I mean, she's speaking Konkani. She's speaking to her son and daughters, daughter-in-law, and everybody.
Yeah, and when language is fluent, it goes beyond language to be about the subject that you're discussing,
That's true,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, because then there's no need to talk about the language.
Yeah, but sometimes you get mocked in your own home, I think.
Hmm.
I've seen it happen with, especially with teenagers in the house, mocking their own grandma because the grandma can't speak American English, for example, or with a twang and so on.
Is this done
Very rarely.
maliciously, or is it just a joke?
I don't know. I've just seen them mock the grandmas.
You should read Pow at some
Yes,
point. Like
Yes,
you said.
yes.
Very nice.
Yeah.
actually.
But
Okay.
thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been working.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
No,
Thank you
yes.
for
Yes, yes, thank you. Okay, I'll read Pau. A Pau Wali. When I was heckled or Eve teased, it was slang for a Goan Catholic girl, Pau meaning bread. We were supposed to be bread makers, bakers, though no one in our house needed dough, maybe roti with the smell of curry on Sunday mornings. I remember my parents sourcing Pau from the Pau Wala instead, who clinked his bell every evening at our building gates. It was my job to stop playing and fetch the bread wrapped in newspaper. As I quickly raced up the floors, I would dig my dirty fingers into soft bellies and grab cloudfuls, sweet Eucharistic melting on my tongue. I fluffed the crusts in a way that it looked full, delivering their emptiness to my mother's dining table. Best-selling award. No one congratulates my best friend. Child raped. Trolls discuss her faith.
My question is, do you think your mom did not know that you were digging into that?
I hope
All
she
my
didn't
mothers know everything.
I hope she didn't know because she was very strict when we were
Yeah.
growing up. So I hope she didn't know.
Okay, we'll be bringing our lovely evening to an end now, unless there's any more questions from the floor. And please feel free to interact with Rochelle after
Yes.
the event is over.
Yeah.
And do pick up her books.
Yes. And I would like to thank you, Heta, for making this
Aye.
1 hour seem like a minute, actually. I
Thank
mean,
you.
I enjoyed myself. I don't know where the hour went.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure. My
Thank you so much for being such a receptive
and
audience.
yeah, announce the cake.
Yeah, you can have